Hey everybody, so if you are looking to live and especially come out and work in China, do not miss this video. I'll be covering some of the most important points and considerations you must have both before and after you arrive in China. So finding an employment opportunity out in China can be relatively straightforward in that there's loads of different sources to get it through. Just back on the British social media, you'll see lots of opportunities for teaching jobs in China and other different industries in China that are employing. So finding a job can often not be the difficult part, but finding the right employer can be a very difficult task. Before we get into a few of the things you need to be careful of, one kind of myth-busting point is that I've heard lots of people who have tried to come out to China on a travel visa and then find a job and start to work by changing their visa when they get here. If that's your theory, I would strongly recommend you don't do it that way for a couple of reasons. Number one is that on anything except a Z visa you can't legally work. So even if it's a business visa, you're not allowed to work here. They do check that, and obviously the punishments can be quite harsh, and especially if you genuinely do want to come out and work here long term. If you get caught working, the punishment will be harsh and you'll likely be blackballed and blackmarked, so you won't be able to get another visa in the future. The second point is that because the Z visa is issued from your home country, even if you do come out, you'll most likely have to go back again to start the visa process. So just from experience I can tell you, you're having to fly back and forth, it takes a lot longer. The cost, obviously, just including all the flights, can start to spiral, and it's not the best way to do it. If you can find a position before you come out, ideal. And if you want to come out and travel and do your research first, then that is also a great way to do it. But just don't go in with the theory of getting out and doing all the visa transfers and changeovers here, because it's nearly impossible, and only in very, very extreme circumstances can that be done with very, very high level individuals. So once you've found the job you like and the potential employer, there's a couple of things that I'd recommend you research. Number one is research the employer itself and the company itself, just to make sure that it's kind of established well and that it's got some history and experience in actually employing foreigners and doing visas. The reason I say that is because a lot of companies that haven't had that experience and don't employ foreigners will often try and make little shortcuts through rumors they've heard and so on, that often ends up kind of turning into a bit of a disaster. They'll say things like, "I'll come out on a tourist visa and then we can organize it all when you get here." That, if it's said to you, should be a huge red flag that they obviously don't probably know what they're really doing, and will end up normally in a bit of a disaster with the visa process. So be very, very careful if you hear that. The second thing is research exactly what you're going to need for your visa process to make sure that you're eligible for it in the first place. The visas now are quite tricky to get, and often they're much stricter on what you're able or how you're able to get them. So get onto the Visa for China website, research the documents and exactly what type of documents you will need. Here is just a kind of basic outline of some of the main ones, but again I would say get onto the website because it will be the most up to date. I'm doing this in December 2025, but to be honest, the rules and the regulations change relatively regularly, and the requirements will often change. So this is just a basic outline of some of the points you'll need. For example, obviously your passport and certain validities, and then your employment and education records, plus also criminal records. These documents you will also need to often get notarized and apostilled, which can be time consuming and also cost a little bit of money, but is required by the China embassy and the China government to basically be recognized that the qualifications and all the documents are legitimate. So once all those documents have been certified, submitted, you're happy with the employer, you've done your research and everything's in, fingers crossed, after a few weeks you should get a Z visa. That Z visa is a single entry visa which will allow you into China to then begin the process of changing that into a resident card and also a work permit card. That process, once you're here, is relatively straightforward if you have the help and all the proper documentation. So I would strongly recommend that you make sure that the company that you're going to work for has someone, and you're in contact with someone who that you know when you arrive will help you deal with all of the points that we're about to cover in the second part of this video. So you arrive in China. Now is the process of changing over this into the permits for working and residence permits. So the first thing you must do once you arrive is get to the police station local to where you are staying. You need to do this because the document you will receive from them will be one of the key points that you will have to give in when you are submitting to change over this visa. There are lots of other documents that you will also need to get ready and get prepared. So again, these are just a list of some of the key documents that you'll need to put together. They're not all just from the UK, some of them again are from China, and these are things that also you will need to prepare when you arrive. So for example, things like the passport photos and also the health check. So in the first 24 hours, you've got to get to the police station and get that document. The other thing I would recommend that you do is organise a Chinese phone number. This is very, very straightforward if you have someone to go with you and help you. This, all you need to do is take in your passport and show them your Z visa, and then that will be enough to get you a phone number in China. Go to one of the main kind of providers in the city. For example, in Shenzhen I use China Telecom and China Mobile, but there are other ones available, and you can get some really great deals from, for example, 50-60 renminbi a month, which will then cover you for data, for substantial data, and some kind of basic phone calls and text messages. But the majority of the time you'll be using the 5G data because everything's done on WeChat and online. So as I just mentioned, one of the things that's also in the documents is the health check. This is something that you've got to get in really fast and do as well, because basically the faster that you start the process, the quicker it can be done. The whole process normally of kind of transferring all the visas over takes about 10 to 15 days once it's been submitted, but obviously if you take longer to process it all, the whole thing gets dragged out a lot longer. So try and make sure you get everything done as quickly as possible. The health checks, you can go to pretty much any of the listed hospitals that the government agency will give you. The health checks, if you go to public, are between 400 and 800 RMB, so not crazy expensive, but that then is valid then to show to the government that you are healthy, and is used then as an additional document for transferring over into the work permit card and the resident permit. Next thing you want to try and get organised is an apartment. So this one is a little bit of a tricky situation, to be honest, in my experience. For this one, you will need your passport. You will also need enough money for 2 months deposit plus the first month's rent. That is the kind of industry standard. Sometimes there are different ones, but the majority of the time it is that kind of setup. The landlords generally will recognise a Z visa as the point that you're going to basically start working here for a substantial amount of time. So that normally is enough to kind of give them a confidence to sign the contract with you to do that. I have had experiences where people don't want to sign it with a foreigner too, so you've got to be a bit careful of that, and you've got to try and find someone who's willing to sign the contract with you. Make sure you check the contract. So for this one, use any of the translator apps. A really good one, especially for here, is called Baidu Translator. I'll send a picture into here and mention it in the comments. That is very, very accurate. You can just take a picture of the document and then it will transfer it all into English so you can read it. A couple of things that I'd be very careful of. Number one is be careful of the dates on it. Just make sure that they kind of match up suitably, and they give you a full year. And the other thing is to make sure about the condition of the apartment. So two things. If in the contract is mentioning anything about equipment and any damages caused, make sure you have a full list of exactly what is in the house and check that it is working. In addition to that, before you rent it, ideally while the landlord is there, go and take a video of absolutely everything in the apartment. One long video, walk around, test everything, test the taps, test the lights, test all the electrics, make sure everything's working, test the appliances, because then if anything is wrong, you can raise it there and then you have video proof that it was broken before you used it. Otherwise, the likelihood is if the landlord comes in a year later and there's anything that he deems was different to when it started, sometimes they will work pretty hard to try and make sure you don't get your deposit back. So one of the final parts is the bank account. So this one you will only normally be able to do once you have submitted everything and after the 15 days you've got your resident permit and your work permit card back. That is because to set up that bank account you will require a phone number, you will normally require a proof of address, so where your new apartment is, and also you'll have to show the resident permit in your passport. There are some situations where they'll let you do it with a Z visa, but now it is very, very rare and almost unheard of just because they have become very, very strict on money laundering. So after you've processed all of the visa stuff and it's all come back to you, you should be able to go into your bank account. Again, as you can see, many different types of banks here that you can use. Personally, I would say stick to kind of some of the main ones, like the top 3 or 4 ones that I've listed here. Those are the most reliable, very easy to set up with all of the online and the WeChat. Then once it's all linked up, life becomes so much more convenient. You can link it up to all of the Taobao, which is the buying apps, all of the food apps, all of the Waimai, which is the delivery foods, and then you can really start to enjoy the full convenience factors of living in China, because everything will be accessible on your phone and you can process everything. That is a really quick roundup of some of the main points that you need to consider both before and after you arrive to make sure you've got to basically make the whole process and the whole move out here as smooth and as easy as possible. If you found this useful, please subscribe, and if you've got any other questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll do my best to reply in the comments and make some additional content which can hopefully answer some of those questions and worries you might have about coming to live out and work in China.